So we are recording, and let me share our agenda for today. There we go. And we have a new dog. So if you missed my invitation last time, down here, today's pet comes courtesy of Rachel. Whoops, sorry about that.
That's Rachel dog?
That's one of Rachel's 3 dogs. But she's not here to tell us what her dog's name is, so we'll just have to make one up. So I guess that looks kind of like a chocolate something or other. So maybe we can call it Nougat. I don't know. We'll have to wait for Rachel to come back.
Maybe
Maybe 3 dogs. Nugget. Okay, we'll call it Nugget, and hopefully we're right.
No, call him Shadow.
Shadow? Okay. How about Shadow Nugget? We'll put it all together. CRT Shadow Nugget. There we go. So if you have a pet, this is a nice way to get to know each other. Send it to my email address. I'll put it into the slideshow. I have 2 more dogs from Rachel, so at some point I want to get those in there. But I'd love to see your pet. If you have it might not be a dog, it could be a cat. One of my colleagues has a parrot. He brought it to our work meeting yesterday, sitting on his shoulder, named Pee-wee, and is just turned 40 years old. I had no idea parrots could live that long, but his parrot is 40 years old, and he said it's got another 20 years left in him. So send me a picture of your pet. I'm happy to put it in our slideshow. So we've already covered these 2 things, our poll, and then the last day to register in New York State, again, is tomorrow. If you need help with that, I'd be happy to help you. And then we're also going to talk about media evaluation in action, and then transition from who to what. And basically what I mean by that is from media to argument. And so we'll get to that in a little bit. There's a little bit of a slideshow. And then we're going to talk about summary writing and get started on that aspect of the personalized learning project. And I'll give you some time to work on developing your summaries in class today. Okay, so first, I would like to take a look at media in action. And again, you can kind of think of this as wrapping up that whole unit. Well, actually, the last several units, the last 3 units really have been about media. And so this is an effort to wrap that section up and move from the who to the what. And I just wanted to point out, I opened up NPR today, and there were a lot of things I read, but one thing that stood out to me is just how much we have covered in this class. And there are so many ways we can apply what we've learned to what's on the front page of NPR today. And so, did anybody happen to watch the vice presidential debate last night?
Yes.
You watched it.
Did.
What did you think of it?
It was.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. What was it?
It was. I don't know. It was kind of like the president won because, like, you know, Trump's person. He kept on talking over and over and over, and the lady's telling him to basically shut up. Like, she wants to say it, but she's being polite. Like,
yeah,
can you please stop? You're going over time.
Right.
And when the lady was talking over a little bit, you know, because he was trying to like break her rep or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he was trying to say bad things about her, and she wants to fix it.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of the nature of it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So it was basically, to me, it was kind of like the president won, but just with 2 different people. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I didn't really feel personally, I didn't think about who won or lost, but I just kind of wanted to see how the 2 of them engaged. And so it was, I thought Kamala Harris, when you compare her to the 3 old white gray men who are also, you know, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and then Mike Pence, she looked really vibrant and young and fresh and you know, diverse and interesting. So that's kind of what I focused on. It was just nice to see their dynamic. The reality is vice presidential debates don't really change much in terms of that. That's the popular belief, but they allow you to get to know those candidates. So I opened up the page, and lots of what the news is about today is about that debate. And the first thing I saw was 4 takeaways from the Mike Pence, Kamala Harris vice presidential debate. So this struck me as we have done this research on evaluating sources. And at one point we were trying to find a reason why this was important. And so here, what NPR has done is they have taken, and we're going to use the terms in the next unit, we're going to start using the terms primary source and secondary source. And this is a good example of what that means. And that has to do with media. How close are you to the original source of the media? And to get, so Kamira and I, that was you, Kamira, sharing your ideas. Yes, it was. So Kamira and I, and anybody else who watched the debate, we experienced the primary source. It's the actual thing, the debate itself. But not everybody has time or interest in that, but they still want to know kind of what happened. So you have the option to engage in a secondary source, and that's what this is all about. 4 takeaways from the debate. So if we were to click on that and read about that, it's a summary, essentially, of the debate. What are the most important points from the debate? And we can read that. What's good about that is instead of watching an hour and a half of footage of the debate itself, or watching clips of the footage, which could be taken out of context, we get to read NPR's summary of the debate. What's bad about that is we have to be willing to trust NPR, that they are actually giving us an authentic summary of that debate. So that's what this is all about. This is a secondary source summarizing the debate. If you trust NPR, you can save yourself the hour and a half and just read this if you want to know what that's all about. There's also a fact check down here. So we talked several times about fact checks. We talked about different websites that offer fact checks. And it is common to find that newspapers offer fact checks now. So here is NPR, and they did live updates and fact checks. So a lot of these, you know, if I'm not sure if there will be another presidential debate because of Trump's positive coronavirus test, but if there is, this is something you can do during the debate. You can go to NPR or the New York Times. There are several newspapers that are, you know, they have a journalist who's watching the debate and knows a ton of stuff already about, you know, whether something is true or not. And so they hear a claim and they can instantly give you all kinds of information as to whether that claim is true or not. And so you can do this live. So you can have this on your screen and have the debate on your television and, you know, watch something and then go, is that true? And you can go to NPR and they'll be responding to it within usually a few minutes. They'll start responding to whether a claim is true or not. So that's what this was all about. We're not going to go through all of these, but I just wanted to share a few of the questions that they might address in a fact check. This is just a summary and like what to expect coming up next. But then you also have, this is the fact check. You see they label it right here. And the question is, did the China travel ban save lives? And NPR, because it's a newspaper, is not likely to give a pants on fire or true rate. It's not going to give you a meter. It's going to tell you the story and explain whether it's misleading or whether it's accurate. Here's the actual statement, the actual quote, and then here's the explanation. And then the next fact check, Pence blames China and the World Health Organization for the pandemic. And here's the actual quote, China is to blame for the coronavirus and so forth. And here is the explanation. This one, which by the way, this explanation thinks that it is slightly misleading that they would say that. They've been pretty clear about the dangers of it since January, and Trump's done very little to stop it, except say that it's not that dangerous. This fact check says Harris, who's again Biden's running mate, Kamala Harris, says Trump refused to condemn white supremacists. And so she says, Senator, this is from Pence actually, Senator Harris conveniently omitted after he made comments about other people on either side of the debate of monuments. He condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. But NPR goes on to note that Trump has appeared hesitant to condemn white supremacy, though he eventually did. And if you watch that clip from the first debate, he was specifically asked, will you denounce white supremacy right now? And his response was, I don't think that's the problem. The left is the problem. And then the moderator said, but will you condemn white supremacy? And he said, what do you want me to do? And he said, will you condemn white supremacy? And he said, who are we even talking about? And he said, the Proud Boys. And he said, stand back and stand by, which no one, it suggested that he was saying that they should not do anything now, but they should do something later. So a lot of people were confused. And this is a more accurate depiction than what this is. So in other words, Mike Pence was being misleading. They talk about Harris's law enforcement record. Pence says you did nothing on this, but then NPR goes on to mention that she has been a vocal advocate for criminal justice reform, particularly since the police killing of George Floyd. And then they spar over the Russia investigation. Where they stand on the Green New Deal. That's the one that's trying to pair climate change reform with economic recovery. And then the overwhelming majority of racial justice protests were peaceful. So this one I thought we would focus on, because we've talked a lot about this stuff. So the claim from Mike Pence, the current vice president, Trump's vice president, is there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd and justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. And this has been a linchpin of the Trump campaign, that those who are rioting and looting in protest of what happened with George Floyd are the danger in the United States, and that they are trying to reform the United States so that there is lawlessness, and that we are trying to elevate racial tension instead of alleviate it, and so forth. So this has been a big disagreement. And so right off the bat, NPR says this is a misleading statement. So this is the term. We looked at several terms referring to fake news and misleading statements, misinformation, disinformation, all these kinds of terms, and they all have they have slightly different meanings. And so what NPR is saying is that not that it's not true, not that it's fake news, it's not fake news, but it is misleading and has been constantly repeated by the Trump administration. So they're saying the overwhelming majority of demonstrations associated with Black Lives Matter and racial justice have been peaceful. And they give a statistic, 93% of protests over the summer were peaceful. And what you're getting from the Trump administration is they're trying to convince Americans that they are 100% violent or 80% violent. And so you can see that there's a big disagreement between what the Trump administration is saying about them and the actual facts. And NPR is using a fact check to make sure that we can find out what the actual truth is based on the facts, not based on the vested interest of wanting to win an election. So if we go back to NPR, it just keeps going with that. This is the comedy. There was a fly that landed on Mike Pence's head and stayed there for 2 minutes during the debate, and it was pretty funny. So it's going to be on all the newspapers today, but it's obviously not important to the election. And then I wanted to point out something like this. Pence promises millions of vaccine doses before 2021. Is that realistic? So again, the NPR is serving to try and evaluate a claim by an official. Is it true? And look at the facts and provide that information. So I hear a lot of the times people don't like politicians because they lie all the time. And that is true that they do. But really what you can think of is that they are shaping reality to favor them. And oftentimes misleading is the more appropriate term compared to lying. And in this case, the promise is that there will be millions of vaccine doses before January. And is that realistic? And NPR evaluates that whole claim in this article right here. Another one, Harris says she would be first in line for a vaccine approved by scientists and not the White House. And this was really important. This stood out to me in relation to our class and what we've been studying the last several weeks, because it goes to show how important source evaluation is. Kamala Harris makes a clear distinction between two different sources and says, I will believe this source, but I will not believe that source. And the direct question was, would you take a vaccine that was approved by the Trump administration? And she said, no, I would not. But I would take a vaccine that is approved by scientists. But she does not trust the Trump administration. So she trusts the scientists, but she does not trust the Trump administration. And that distinction is important for her in deciding whether she would take a vaccine. So up and down the news today, I just kept finding all these ways that we have covered that. We've covered source evaluation, we've covered fact checking, we've covered the concept of misleading information compared to fake news, compared to factual information, and so forth. And so you'll find that this is actually a lot of what newspapers are doing. They're trying to find what happened and then trying to understand, put that in the clearest possible light. And I chose NPR because, again, I find it to be one of the most reliable newspapers. If you're looking for someone to trust, they're pretty good. They might be the best ones. We found that New York Times is a little to the left, while Wall Street Journal is a little to the right. We had Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. Those are kind of in a different category, but they have their own political bias. This one right here, not only is really close to being in the middle and objective, but it also has, it does shift away from politics usually. So you can get things like, well, here's a hurricane coming, but they also I guess today is a pretty strong political day. They also will put a lot of like, here's a book review, and they also will have music in there and things like Life Kit, how to eat healthy on a budget. So I did want to wrap up kind of advocating for this newspaper, because if you don't have one that you trust, it's a really good place to start. Okay, so let's go back to our agenda. So that's media evaluation in action. And again, today we're kind of transitioning from one part of our course to another part of our course. And that transition is going to be a bit challenging, I will say. For one thing, your personalized learning project, well, both the annotated bibliography and the project are due in this second part of the course. So that will start to intensify. For another thing, we're shifting from who to what. And the who part is about, going to news agencies and looking at individuals and organizations. The what part is going to dig deep into what people are actually saying and find ways to evaluate the words that they're saying, not just their background. And it gets tricky, and there's a system of doing it called logic and reasoning that we have to learn. So I just wanted to use this moment to remind you that at this midpoint, I'm going to start alerting people that if they have not completed some work from the first half of the class, I'll start alerting people of that by assigning zeros to those grades. I'm open to allowing you to do those assignments if you have outstanding assignments, but I have to alert you somehow that you're missing it, just to be sure that you know. I'm hoping that you know, but you might not. So make sure to take this weekend. We have a long weekend. We have no class on Monday. Our next class will be Wednesday. And our next module will be Wednesday also. Take this extra time that you have. You have 6 days till our next class comes, and make sure you've got everything done and submitted to me. And you're satisfied with all of your grades. A lot of them can be redone. Even if you got an 8 out of 10, sometimes you can do it again and get 2 more points. And I'd encourage you to do that. And this is a great time to do it, so that when we go into our next section, you'll be clear, the past will be behind you, you'll be able to focus on the argumentation aspect of this course and on the personalized learning project. To clarify a little bit more about where we're headed, Uh, just a few ideas about making the transition from sources to arguments. So when we're talking about sources, we're talking about who. Who are we? Who is the person behind this, or whom does it come from? You're evaluating a person and you're evaluating an organization. So you should be very familiar with this at this point. And knowing that, going back to Kamala Harris, she said that she would not trust the person Donald Trump, but she would trust organizations that are approved by scientific inquiry or scientists. So she made that distinction. This person, don't trust. This organization, I do trust. So it depends. Where does the vaccine come from? From here or from there? She said she'd be the first in line if scientists approve it. But if Trump approves it, she absolutely will refuse because she does not trust him. And that's her evaluation of that person. So that's what it really comes down to. Do you trust the source? And if you do, then you can start evaluating the argument. If you do not, there's a phrase that I think, I learned it from another writer who used to talk about this. He'd say, hear everything, believe nothing. And what that means is just because you don't trust a source doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to that person. For example, I personally have evaluated Donald Trump. He has been cataloged as having lied 20,000 times in the 4 years of his presidency. So I don't trust him. And he lies in a different way than other politicians do. He lied about COVID, and he admitted that he lied about COVID, that he was trying to protect us from panicking. But really what he was doing was preventing us from taking safe measures to protect ourselves and our families by downplaying the virus. So nonetheless, I still need to hear everything he says, even though I don't believe most of the things he says, because I need to know what the president is saying. I need to know what his view is and how he is influencing the country and the world. So that's a really good way to go about. If you don't trust a source, don't just throw them in the garbage. Just listen to what they say, but you don't have to believe everything that they say. Another note about that is that even unreliable sources sometimes make good arguments. So just because a person has lied 20,000 times doesn't mean that what they're saying right now is a lie. So if what they're saying right now matters to you and you need to evaluate that, just go do a fact check and find out if what that person said was true. So, a few days ago, Trump said that COVID was no more dangerous than the flu. You can type that into Snopes. You'll find that it's actually 3 times more deadly than the flu. So that was a false claim. But if it had been true, that'd be good to know. It might change your view on the virus. It happens to be false, so it just fits in line with the other 20,000 things you said that were lies. And that's not surprising because we have evaluated that person and we know what to expect. And then the last point on sources, I've mentioned this several times, is to corroborate your sources. And what that means, again, actually, I'm going to ask you, can anyone remember what it means to corroborate sources?
Compare one source with another to see if they match.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's really about probability. How many people agree? And especially how many people with different viewpoints agree. Because you could corroborate, if you do all left-wing sources and they are corroborated, that's one thing. But if you're able to find left and right-wing sources and they are corroborated, then you increase the probability that that is correct. But generally speaking, the more people say it's true, the more likely it is to be true. But at the same time, again, there are distinctions there: left-wing, right-wing, scientists, politicians, so you still need to know who you're talking about and whether you trust those people and those sources. But if you find 3 sources you trust, for me, it's the New York Times, NPR, and the Wall Street Journal. So I've got one that's on the left, one that's in the middle, one that's on the right, and all 3 of them are excellent news sources. If they all say the same thing, then I have a strong degree of confidence that that thing is true. And that's what corroborating is. So yeah, who else agrees? On the argument side, we'll talk about what. So this is where we're headed, and we're going to start next week, Wednesday. And again, I really strongly encourage you to do everything you can to finish all the work from the past so that we can start fresh on arguments, because it will challenge your thinking. So the first thing to say about an argument is its definition. It is a conclusion that is drawn from evidence. It's also created in a systematic way. And what that means is you don't just think with your gut and decide. You know, a lot of people will say, I don't think climate change is real, but that's just my opinion. And really, climate change is not a question of opinion. You know, what's a question of opinion is, do you want to go to the movies, or do you just want to go to dinner and then go home? You know, so that's a question of opinion. What do you prefer? Do you like pizza, or do you like pasta? That's a question of opinion. Do you like to travel, or do you like to stay home? Those are all questions of opinion. Do you believe in climate change? That is not a question of opinion. That's a question of, have you learned what that argument is? Have you learned that evidence? And after having studied all of that stuff, are you convinced by the argument that climate change is a real thing? So that's what I mean by a systematic way. There is a system of thinking, and we are going to engage in that system of thinking. And it's actually really great. It's really fun and empowering to use that system. And another thing about arguments is they make you vulnerable to being wrong. So again, if I said, do you like pizza or pasta? And you said pasta, I wouldn't say wrong, pizza's the right answer, because it's your opinion. You can't really be wrong on your opinion, but you can be wrong with your argument. So if you make an argument, you should be vulnerable. If you say that climate change is happening, you're vulnerable. If you say climate change is not happening, you're vulnerable. You've made yourself available to criticism from either side. So whatever argument that you make, you should be a little bit vulnerable or a lot vulnerable to being wrong. Otherwise, it's probably a fact, or it could also be an opinion. You know, it's different than an argument. Arguments have the power to change the very nature of our world. And this may seem like an exaggeration, but it's really not. And I've put some examples on here. One argument is that COVID is deadly. Another argument is that COVID is not that bad. And which argument is correct changes what we do with our lives. The world has decided collectively, mostly, that COVID is deadly, and decided to mandate masks, mandate staying at home, limit the number of people who can be in groups. And that's because we have chosen to believe that COVID is deadly. However, there are other people who say that COVID's not bad, and those people often choose not to wear a mask, choose to ignore stay-at-home orders or gathering orders and things like that. So you can see that whether you believe one thing or another dramatically changes how you act in the world today. And it dramatically changes how a population of people acts in the world today. And how they are acting is going to change what we experience. So the virus will spread, or the virus will not. And if you look at the United States, we have 210,000 deaths and well over 1 million cases of COVID. And we have one of the worst rates of positive tests and deaths in the entire world. And that's partly because we have a lot of people who think COVID's not that bad. But there are places like New Zealand where almost everybody believed that it's deadly. So when the president ordered a shutdown, they shut down for 2 weeks. And eventually they got to 0 cases of COVID, and they opened everything up again. And then a few weeks ago, they got a few cases, so they shut it all down again. And now they're down to 0 again, because everybody has agreed that COVID is deadly, and we're all going to take these actions together. And there are quite a lot of countries who have done that. By comparison, there were more cases at the White House in the United States over the last week than there were in New Zealand, Australia combined, several countries combined, because they believe in a different argument. We already talked about the climate change thing. If you believe that it is real, you might want to, for example, vote for politicians who believe it's real, so that they can make major changes to the way we do things. And that's what the Green New Deal is all about from the Biden campaign. then there are those who believe it's not real or not that big a deal, and that happens to be the Trump administration. And so they have deregulated things. So there's actually, we're actually having less precautions against climate change over the last 4 years because they don't believe, Trump's administration does not believe that that argument is true. And lots of Americans don't believe that that argument is true. The consequence is, if it is true, we should see more wildfires, more hurricanes, more floods, and so forth, more blizzards, more extreme weather in general, and rising sea levels. If it's not true, then those things should go back to normal, and we were right to not waste our time and money on trying to prevent this cause. So the consequences are major. If you believe the argument is true and you take action against it, you could potentially stop something that could alter the course of our lives. And if you believe it's not true, you could prevent those kinds of changes. One last example is the justice system is fair versus the justice system targets non-whites and the poor. Really, I've arranged all of these. They are left and right points of view. COVID is deadly, climate change is real. Actually, that's not true. The justice system targets non-whites and the poor is a left-wing view. The other three, COVID is not that bad, climate change is not real, and the justice system is fair, are all generally right-wing views. So you can see how it's even dividing the country into political parties, which arguments you believe in. And it does change the very nature of our decisions. Whoops. Okay, so that's the end of the media section and our transition into our very next. Thank you, Tenzin. That's great. And our transition into the next section, which is going to be more about evaluating arguments and so forth. So I wanted to offer an opportunity for any questions you might have about the class at this point, because we don't have a midterm test. We don't have any major tests like that. We have quizzes, and you've taken some of them already, and you'll take more when we get to logic in particular. But instead of a midterm exam, it's kind of just a moment where we can stop and reflect on what we've done so far and prepare for the next section in the class. So are there any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah.
Saquon, what's up?
Hello. Yeah, I just caught up on unit 4. So I don't know what to do.
You just caught up on what?
Unit 4.
Sorry, I still didn't get you.
Sorry. Yeah, I just caught up on unit 4, so I don't know what I gotta do.
Okay, so you have questions about what to do for unit 4?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I can help you. I could help you after class if you want.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Great. Any other questions? And I would. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to ask me right now, because again, it's both about making the framework transition from media from who to what, and it's also about making sure that you've got everything in the past completed and you know what to do. So if you have any questions or comments.
I needed to say something about the homework on fake news part 1. There was the question you asked to select 2 options, but it didn't allow me to select 2 options, but it also didn't give me the point.
Which assignment was that?
Fake news part 1.
Okay, and let me take a look at that for a moment, because other people may have this issue. So we are in unit 4 and fake news part 1. And what happened?
There was a question you asked to select 2 options.
To select 2 options?
Yeah.
Okay, and you were not allowed to select more than one?
Yeah.
I see.
And also I didn't get the point.
And you didn't get what?
Point. I got
the
0.
point. Okay, so I have to fix that then. Thank you. Fake news. Select 2. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so let's take a look at where we're headed then. Unit 5 is now available to everyone, or should be. And our first module for that is already available. Again, it's not due until next week, Wednesday, because we have no class Monday. And when you
we have no class Tuesday?
there's no class Tuesday either. So just Wednesday, Thursday next week. And so here's our first module for that unit. You'll see that you have to distinguish between factual and opinion statements in the news. That should be somewhat familiar to you. And then you'll have to take a fact and opinion quiz. And this actually comes from the Pew Research Center. So you'll click here to take the quiz. And you'll just click on next here. So, and you'll have to decide, increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour is essential for the health of the US economy. And you have to decide if that's a factual statement or an opinionated statement. And then you click factual or you click opinionated and click next. And then at the end of that, you'll have 10 questions and they'll give you a score. You don't actually have to do anything with that score. You have to write a response into this chat room. And so, well, once you get your score, you'll have a sense of whether you did well or did poorly on that. Keep in mind that quiz, most adult Americans did poorly on that quiz, and they had a hard time differentiating between facts and opinions. So the one thing I'll say about that for you to help you differentiate is that a fact can be measured. That's one of its characteristics, is that it can be measured to some extent. And that term is a bit of a metaphor in some cases, but the most literal way of doing it is to say that someone is tall is probably a matter of opinion. It would fit closer to a matter of opinion. But to say that someone is 6'6", now that is a fact. That is something that is measured. The word tall might mean something different to one person than it does to another. For example, if someone comes from a family where the shortest person in the family is 6'6", then they wouldn't think of 6'6" as tall necessarily. So to make it a fact, you just give the actual measurement. When you go to the doctor, they take all kinds of facts. They also take opinions. You know, they'll say, "How are you feeling?" And they want to know what your perspective is on how you're feeling. What you said then becomes a fact for them, because you said that and they were there and they heard it and they typed it while you said it. So those are the kinds, that's the difference between the basic difference between a fact and opinion, is that the fact can be measured in some way, or can be traced back to an original source somehow. Now, when we talk about fact checks, that's what fact checkers are doing. They're going to find all the facts related to the statement, and then they evaluate the statement. So that's that. And then we'll take a look at our first section on writing summaries for the personalized learning project. So you can see I wrote a long thing here, and I'm actually going to read it to you now because it would be great if you could get a start on this. You know, I know some of you are up to date with all of your assignments. So now is a good time to write your first 2, 3, maybe all 5 of your summaries and start sharing them with me. So this one says, with about 2 weeks to go until the PLP annotated bibliography is due, it's time to start writing summaries based on the notes you've taken on your PLP articles. Again, this is referring to next week, Wednesday. So there's really more like 3 weeks to go. So next week, we will study the argument, which will help to further identify the main points of your articles. In the meantime, use the titles of each article to try to help you find the main point. Then when we study the argument next week, use that information to allow you a fresh look at your summaries. Did you, in fact, find the argument and position it as the main point? So then I give you a little formula here. And then I immediately say there really isn't a formula. Since summaries serve many different purposes, and any formula must be adapted to suit that purpose. However, in this case, we know the purpose, to convey to me that you read and understood the main points of the articles. So here is a suggested approach for writing your summaries. What I mean by that is you can't assume that anytime a professor or anybody asks you to write a summary, that this is what they want. So you have to find out from each audience, who is your audience and what do they expect? I'm telling you, I'm your audience and this is what I expect, that's all. So sentence 1, that's what we're going to look at today. It's the most important sentence, and it should include the title, author, and the main idea of the article. And it should be written in your own words. An example of that is, in the article, "Stocks are soaring, so is misery," author Paul Krugman argues, and then write the main idea of the article. We're going to do that in a moment together. Note that this is one sentence and includes all 3 things: title, author, and main idea. Your first sentence for each of the 5 paragraphs should do the same. And once again, we're going to practice that in just a moment. Sentence 2 then, it is possible you want to state the article's main idea in 2 sentences. If so, feel free. If not, this should be the first important point used as support for the article's main argument. Sentences 3 through 7, and I do want you to keep your summaries to 7 sentences or fewer. Well, 5 to 7 sentences. So if you give me 4, it's probably too little. If you give me 8, it's probably too much. If you give me 4 or 8 because that's the right amount and you really feel strongly in that, it's a bit of a risk, I would say, because you could lose points. But if you have all the information I need to see, and you're not, going on and on and on, and don't have too much information, you can still get full points for that. But I really give you that sentence range because sometimes I get a summary that is 25 sentences long, and that's not really a summary anymore. It's almost the length. It's like maybe half the length of the article. You really want to get it shorter, and that's one of the goals of summarizing, is to be selective about what you put in there and what you leave out. So sentences 3 through 7, you're required to have at least 5 sentences, but no more than 7 in each of your summaries. These remaining sentences should reveal the 3 to 5 most important supporting details for the article's main argument. And a reminder, you must write the whole summary in your own words. Do not quote from the article, instead paraphrase. So I would guess that many of you are kind of new to paraphrasing. So here is a link, and you can read about it. It tells you what paraphrasing is, tells you the 6 steps to effective paraphrasing, some examples to compare, and an acceptable summary. And they also give you a plagiarized version where the paraphrasing is too close to the original wording. So the most important thing for sentence 1 is that you have the title, the author, and you can give me the main point of the whole article. The most important thing about sentences 2 through 7 is that you have selected the correct, the most appropriate major ideas from that article to include in your summary, and you have not selected anything that is too minor to include. You want to get it just right. It's really a matter of, too much is too much, too little is too little. You want to get the right amount exactly. That's what a summary is really all about. And then making sure that you paraphrase. So, and then I just wanted to answer the question, will I read your summaries before they are due? Hopefully you know the answer to that already. I'm often asked if I would be willing to read student summaries, and the answer is yes. However, there are 2 things to keep in mind. One is that I need time. So please do not submit multiple summaries to me right before the annotated bibliography is due. Give me at least 2 days, preferably 3 or more days, to read, comment, and return the summary to you. So just keep in mind that there's lots of students, and many of them are fully online and they don't attend these Zoom sessions. So there's about 50 of us all together, really. And so if I get 50 people sending me 3 summaries 2 days before they're due, that's 150 summaries. I just can't do that. The best I would be able to do is 1 summary for each person, but I might not even be able to get all that done in 2 days. So the earlier, the better. And really, if you want a good grade, write a summary before Monday and send it to me by email, and then I'll take a look at it. or you could share it with me during one of our deep work periods, and I'll take a look at it, and then move on to summary 2. So that's what I would suggest, is get your first summary done early, and then revise it based on my comments. You could keep working on summary 1 until you feel like you really have the model, and then work on summary 2. It's a much better way of going about it than waiting until 2 days before the assignment's due and trying to crank out all 5 and then send me all 5 of those by email. You're probably going to lose points if you do that. So then it also says submit summaries 1 at a time. The reason for this is there are certain principles that I will comment, and when you submit more than 1 summary at a time, most likely I will make the same comment over and over. So I think commonly I'll get summaries and the first sentence doesn't have the author or title for all 5 of them. And so you just wrote 5 articles and 5 summaries, and now you have to revise all 5 of them. It's much more worth your time and mine if you just write the first one, send it to me, and I say, don't forget you need the article and the title in the first sentence, and you revise that, and then you remember that for the rest of your summaries. So and that way on summary 2, we can focus on a different thing that will help you to do well. It says, note that you can indeed submit all 5 summaries to me. The way to do this is to submit the first summary early, then read my comments, make changes, and either resubmit to see if you got it right, or submit summary number 2. In order for this to work, you'll have to start submitting assignments as soon as possible, summaries as soon as possible. So I know that many of you are in position to do that. So I would love to see your summaries. So I'm actually going to be I'm taking a weekend off, and since we have the long weekend, and a friend of mine has a cabin, and she's been quarantining, so we're going to go and stay in that cabin. So I probably won't respond to it this weekend, but when I come back, I would love to see some summaries in my email inbox so I can give you some help. And then number 3 here, you can also share summaries with me during office hours, or also deep work periods. And that way we can do person to person. In other words, we can do it over Zoom if you want. Okay, and then note that you do not have to submit anything for this activity quite yet. The assignment to begin writing summaries is meant to help you keep on pace with your PLP annotated bibliography. All 5 of the summaries will be graded as part of the PLP annotated bibliography. Okay, so that's actually all of, I know that was a lot of talking, but I wanted to get through it all, and now we've got 45 minutes. So this is the best I've done. I wanted to give you time to work on your project and share things with me right now. So to be sure, you should have an issue. If you don't have an issue, this is an urgent matter, and you should raise your hand right now and say, I need help. You should have all 5 of your articles. And if you don't have all 5 of your articles, you should work on that right now. If you don't know how to find all 5 of your articles, or don't know what counts as good articles to use, you should raise your hand right now, and then I can help you with your articles. So those are 2 things that are really important. After you do that, works cited. And you can share that with me as well. That should have been submitted already, but that one has unlimited attempts. So if you didn't get 10 out of 10, you should just do it again and again and again and again until you get them all correct. And so...
Wait, time out.
Sure.
You're supposed to be doing again and again and again?
If you don't have to, but if you want to get 10 out of 10 on, well, most assignments are like that actually, but the works cited in particular, if you got 8 out of 10, I wrote a comment why you lost 2 points. So you can change that and submit it again if you want.
Wait, can I send it to you through email?
No,
or...
send it to me through Blackboard, because I'll grade it in there, and you have unlimited attempts through Blackboard. So it's the best way to do it. And so you will get a grade on whatever you submit to me, but you can always improve the grade by submitting it again. Any other questions or comments at this point?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. I was on the Blackboard and I sent work to you like a couple days back.
Yep.
Did you receive that? Did you get all
I
that?
I can take a look. Yeah, it generally takes me a few days to I'm usually a few days behind on grading. That's
All
just
right.
kind of the nature of grading.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. And I got my 5 articles you told me about last time. I did that. I got it already.
You got all 5 of your articles. Did you create your works cited?
Yeah.
Did you submit your works cited?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So for people like Justin, you should also have your authors arranged on a spectrum. That's
Oh, I
another
didn't do that
assignment.
yet. I didn't do that
Okay,
yet. I didn't do that
so
yet.
you could do that now,
All right.
and then you're ready to work on annotating and writing summaries.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Cool, balls.
I got a question.
Yes, Taekwon.
Being that I missed the last class, do that count as me like missing class? Like I know like 3 classes I got to miss get kicked out.
No, you don't. These are not required. These Zoom sessions are not required. So you don't get a grade for this. This is just to help, but everybody who's in here gets all this information. If you don't come to these sessions, you just have to read it on Blackboard and figure it out yourself. So it won't affect your grade.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got 45 minutes and we are going to do a deep work period. I'm learning a little bit more about how to set up the breakout rooms and that I can change them as the class goes on. So if you want a breakout room, you can let me know at any time. If you want to join a partner or a group, you can let me know that as well, and I'll set up a breakout room for you. And the purpose of this is not to have a conversation. If you have a conversation, that's okay. Ideally, you keep it on track, obviously. But I just say that so that you don't feel awkward. That was our first session like this. People felt awkward because no one was saying anything. But really, it's about working. It's about just start. You got your computer going, get it, and then ask me questions if you have them, and I'll come and answer. If you're in a breakout room and you want to ask a question, next to the recording button on the top left of the screen, there is a way to ask a question. And then it will alert me wherever I am. I might be in someone else's breakout room. If that happens and I don't get to you immediately, that's because I have a queue. I usually will have a queue. And so early is better. If you want to make sure you have a chance to share your work with me, raise your hand as soon as you've got it, and then I'll put you on the queue, and hopefully we get a chance to chat. But it does happen sometimes where I have a queue of 3 or 4 people. So if you're the 4th person, you raise your hand, I've got, I'm going to be 10-15 minutes before I'm able to get to you. So please do raise your hand early, and then I'd love to be able to come help you. I also want to say that ideally I can keep our visits between no longer than 3 minutes, maybe up to 5 minutes, just so that I can continue to move through other people. So be prepared. If you want to share your works cited, have it ready on your computer, and then I'll come into your breakout room or wherever, share screen, I'll look at it, I'll give you my comments, and then we can move on. Okay, so I have 1 breakout room so far. If you want to be in a breakout room by yourself or with somebody else, you can just type it into the chat room to me privately or to everybody. It's up to you. Otherwise, if you want to stay in the main room, you can, and we'll begin working now. And you can start asking questions now, in fact. Okay, I've got my second breakout room. Okay. If you requested a breakout room, you can join that room. There we go. Okay, so everyone in here did not request a breakout room. So this is the main room. I will, and if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and I'll come answer your question. Hi, Tenzin. Are you there? Okay, I'll try coming back.
You didn't hear that the professor's mother got corona too.
And there he goes right there. Hi, Professor.
I popped in. Hi.
Damn, wait a minute.
You don't pay attention to the screen, don't you?
Okay, that caught me off guard.
That's all right.
You always look down
No
at the
worries.
screen. I pay attention. I was just telling him that I was not like feeling class today. That's the reason why I came in class a little late, because my brother had corona over the weekend and it got really, really bad yesterday.
Oh man.
So I really wasn't
Sorry
like
to
in
hear
the
that.
mood to talk or do anything really.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Damn.
Yeah, it's okay. He'll manage. It's just the worst part is all of us in the medical field, so all of us is arguing. That was
Right.
like the most weirdest part of it all yesterday. He's
Yeah.
a nurse. My mother's a nurse.
Oh,
I'm a
my.
medical receptionist, so I already know all the formulas and all the deals. And I
Right.
work as an MA if I feel like it.
Yeah.
All of us is arguing on the phone, trying to make him feel better and tell him to go to the doctor. And he's saying, no, I don't want to go. So
Yeah.
it's like
He
a lot.
should go. There ain't no excuse.
No, is the fact that he has idea of how the hospital is. And a lot of people don't know what's going on there because we have relatives and we have family members that do it. So we know what to expect. And he's going through it. He's like, no, I don't want to go. And it's probably he's scared. And it scared my mother as well and all of us. So it's like what to do in those situations.
Mm-hmm. I
So that's
understand.
yeah.
Do you have it in you to help Shoni with his works cited again?
Yeah, I have the energy to do it. I was gonna ask him if he has it up and running so we could see it.
Well, the problem was the formatting, and we talked a little bit about that. And you've got the formatting down, and it's just a series of very specific steps, as you know.
Oh, he got it up and running. Now he's getting ready.
Yeah.
I see it.
I was doing this during class. I do my work during class every single day, before after class too. So yeah,
I always do it sometimes on the weekend of. I always do a batch out like today is Thursday. All the homework that he wants, I'm gonna do it today or tomorrow. I always do it that way.
Good. Do you think that, I was thinking maybe I could come back in like 10 minutes or so and take a look at this again. Do you think you can get it into the correct formatting, Zashoni?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna share it to.
Cool. I'll try to get back in about 10 minutes, and if you're ready to share it with me, just raise your hand, and I'll come back and take a look at it.
All right.
All right. Thank you. I'll be back.
Class?
No problem.
All right. What is this, class or something?
Why is it still bold?
Just wanted to say if anyone has questions, I'm available.